Thank you all for joining us for the AI Research Tools Workshop. Today's workshop speaker is Brittany Sterling, UNLV Libraries. I will now hand it over to Brittany to get us started.
Hi, y'all. So, as I always like to say, they call it research for a reason. And it's because things like this come up in the middle of you doing a great job. So, for those of y'all who just joined or who didn't hear me before, I'm Brittany Sterling. I'm the Social Sciences and Interdisciplinary Studies librarian. And I am supposed to be talking to you about AI research tools today, which I will do. But we'll probably have to cut this live session a little bit short because I'm having technical difficulties. So apologies also to you who will view this recording later. It was supposed to go smoother than this. So I think I would say the thing to keep in mind with AI research tools is as everyone, and by that I mean companies, as many individual companies are creating their own in-house generative AI, or especially for like writing purposes, like that's why y'all are at boot camp. There's a lot of tools. And so, unlike ChatGPT, which was, I think, most people's introduction to AI, unless you're really in that space, um, there are some free versions of things, but most things are going to want you to do a trial that turns into a paid thing. And I just want to start off by saying that um, because you can't get the full benefit of a lot of these things without paying for them. So they can be helpful. Just know that that's kind of the way the landscape is going. There are still some that you can get some functionality out of, though. Go ahead and advance the slide for me. I appreciate it. Okay, so our agenda was to explore 5 of these tools. I'm still gonna eventually put the rest of these links in here. I just can't do it and talk to you at the same time. But here's a smattering of them that I thought would be helpful for you who are at boot camp today. Sorry for it looks like some of the screen is like a little off center. The first 3 you can see here. The first one is called Jenny, which their sort of claim to fame is for you to get suggestions whenever you're stuck or expand your notes into full paragraphs. And so that's kind of an interesting one. I really wanted to show you all this one because I think it might help for some of the things you might be getting stuck on while you're trying to, put your nose to the grindstone right now. There's also Cite, which might help the more analytical types. So its claim to fame is helping find relevant literature and defining research gaps, but it also will do something like sort of analyze all the places that something is cited and also let you know if the claims from the new authors are supporting or refuting that research, which I think is very helpful for, I think there's a lot of STEM folks in here this time. That might be helpful for you in your methodology or your analysis or even in your discussion write-up. There's also Scholar-C, which summarizes any paper, article, textbook, and even videos. And its real difference is that you can sort of make almost like a content map. It will, if you upload a paper you've written or you have a paper that you're liking and you want to come back to, you can almost make a digital flashcard with it, which is kind of nice. And by that, I mean, it will give you sort of a summary in addition to the abstract. It will pull out relevant key points. It'll pull out key terms for you. And it will also sort of make it into non-academic language if you would like. And I thought that might be helpful for some of you who may like to write colloquially first and then make it academic. I know we have a lot of dissertators in here, so it also could be helpful for organizing the many different related but slightly different nuanced kind of concepts that you're going to need to write about in your dissertation. Next slide, please. Okay. We also have Hyperwrite, which I think actually has the most relevant writing tools for folks who are in this bootcamp. And so I would suggest if you're looking to try an AI to help with whatever project it is you're addressing here, this is probably the one I'd suggest that you start with first, personally. I didn't want to call this AI writing tools because I am not the writing center, but as we know, research is often a part of the writing bit. So I wanted to give you a full kind of coverage of that. Hyperwrite delivers real-time links and citations to the most relevant information. It also has over 100 writing tools. And so we'll see if I can get you all on your side to open this one up. I might just have you log in as me and give you my info in this in a like DM or something, because this would be a good one to illustrate. Um, it can do things like sort of distill down your topic to writing like you need to explain it to someone who's 5. It can make things more formal. It can play with tone. It can play with clarity. It can also expand, a sentence into a paragraph, and it can, if you're very long-winded like I am, I'm a flowery language girl. If you need to take your 8 paragraphs down to 3, it can help with something like that. Um, thank you, Alyssa. And so lastly, we've got Claude, which is probably the lesser known Chat GPT equivalent. I want to list this one here because I think at this point, if people played around with AI a little bit, then they probably have gone to Chat GPT. It's the easiest sort of one, the one that's been blown up the most. Claude is a little different because it's trained to have sort of natural text-based conversations. So if you're a person who sort of needs to write it out colloquially and then get it to the academic way, or you want to summarize your questions in a way that would make sense to, let's say, an audience you're giving a presentation for that's not an academic audience, you could think of them and conceptualize them in such a way that they will make sense to, let's say, in my case, I'm going up for tenure soon, y'all. I need people who don't work in libraries to understand what I do. So I kind of had to disciplinize my language as I was writing that. It's good for something like that. It might be also good for maybe the earlier parts of dissertators. So these are the 5 that I'd recommend you maybe start poking around at a little bit. Go ahead and advance the next slide, please. And then I will see about getting you my login credentials for one of these. So overall considerations that I want to talk to y'all about. I know I mentioned that you may not get full functionality without paying, but I also want to give the disclaimer that everything paid is not better and everything free is not helpful. So it might be easier to get started with the free thing, like ChatGPT. Even if you have used ChatGPT, then you probably have not seen the full functionality unless you have the paid version, or so I'm told by people who use it quite a bit. I will say with these 5 that I've given you here, I signed up for them just so I could do the grunt work for you and see if they're worth it or not. My personal opinion is that the paid versions of these are all better. The main reason is that I would say 3 out of 5 of them only will give you a free trial for 7 days, so you don't really have a choice about whether or not you pay for them if you want to use them. And unless you're doing a lot of, I guess, like relaxed language in whatever you're writing up, because I know this is a mixed crowd, even though there are a lot of dissertators, then Claude is probably not the thing you're going to be using to do most of your help, because it is more, as they say, natural sort of text-based language. So what you would be having a conversation in is more of what it will generate for you. As you can see in the second bullet point, depending on your learning and writing style, I'm calling it the reverse engineered approach to AI. It might be as much work for you as just going about the normal way, air quotes, of sort of writing up things. I will say for some of these, and that's why I want to demonstrate their differences for you. For some of these, they will suggest articles that you can look up, or they'll ask you for a prompt like, what are you working on today? I tend to search some of my own work to see what it will come up with, because librarianship is interdisciplinary, but also is like sort of a niche subject that falls under social sciences a lot. So it should be able to find me some, at least sociological or some sort of education-based citations, right? And it will do that. However, because AI models are built on what's called large language processing models, that basically means they have just been given, or the algorithm behind all of these products has been given like the whole of human knowledge that's on the internet, essentially. It doesn't think per se, but it does have access to everything. That means everything biased, everything incorrect, everything misinformation also. So you do still have to do some sifting through with any of these that you use to make sure your information is correct. And for some of you, it might just be easier to skim the article yourself and sort of maybe even old school highlight and make notes, as opposed to getting some responses to your prompts and then having to do the backwards work of trying to make sure it's relevant. Now, I'd say 8 times out of 10, based on me playing around, it is usually relevant. That doesn't mean it's the most relevant. So that's why I wanted to point it out to you. And then lastly, you actually want to read the terms and conditions when you sign up for these. And I would say not just these, but other research tools that you need to maybe do the analysis for your work that you're going to be writing up in the end. And the reason I know this is because I was just finishing up a qualitative project where I and my research team interviewed 25 people, and we were doing thematic analysis on their answers, so we could sort of make our coding frame and all of this stuff. But in the midst of doing that, the research tool we were using introduced its own generative AI. Now, all that it showed to us, the researchers, was like sort of a try it button and gave us a little summary of what it was supposed to do. Now, if we'd gone through and clicked that, then the company that we were using their product would have owned all of our research, and it only would have stayed in their sort of memory or their servers for 30 days. So after all the work and all the theming we did, we would have both lost our work. We would have violated IRB because we're not supposed to be sharing that information. And we wouldn't have necessarily known that that's what happened. It would have just disappeared and we would have been confused, you know? So if you can kind of scroll through and actually read the terms and conditions, especially if you're needing to upload something like already collected data, then I would highly, highly recommend that because you would hate to lose it. Okay, next slide. Thanks. Okay, so I want to, because I think some of us are still getting our feet wet in this arena, talk a little bit about how to AI. So there is a sort of frame for using ChatGPT that I use for most of these, and it's called CLEAR. So we're going to talk about how you can be clear next. Next slide, please. Okay, so CLEAR stands for concise, logical, explicit, adaptive, and reflective. So we're going to go over each one just so you have an idea. So the concept of concise is to be clear and direct when communicating with AI. Avoiding extraneous words, which is hard for people like me, is very helpful. If a word isn't clarifying your intent, then that would make it an extraneous word. So there's some bad and good sort of examples here that you could use just for simple sentences. So a bad example of conciseness would be, could you write something about a topic related to science? A better example would be, write an essay on the ethical implications of genetic engineering in humans. Hopefully that makes sense, especially for the level of writing that's happening in here. That's probably more of what you'd be looking for anyway. But I would also add to this to maybe think about the jargony words that are in your discipline and balance using the specificity you need for your projects and the fact that, once again, AI is just spitting back information to you. So you also don't want to get the world's hardest to read article sort of coming back to you, and these that will suggest articles if you don't have the level of expertise in that to understand what's happening, because you wouldn't be able to understand your citation if you had to explain it to someone. As for the logical, organize your prompts into clear, easy to follow steps. Better results appear if you ditch prose. So the bad example is, please create a 5-minute speech about the importance of renewable energy and also include some statistics on carbon emissions. A better prompt would be, first, write a 5-minute speech about the importance of renewable energy, then include at least 2 statistics about carbon emissions to support your argument. So I know they're small nuances, but for those of you who've played around with this, it really does make a difference if you were to follow this kind of thing. Or I know for ChatGPT fans, a lot of people are a fan of saying, say this, but more academically or more persuasively, or this or that. It does change things a little bit, but because you're using the free version of ChatGPT more often than not, you're not really getting back what you want, which is what we'll talk about in the next slide. So as far as being explicit, giving it explicit instructions gets you sort of, you can track your changes, if you will, and what prompts worked for what you wanted. Most tools have memory, if you will, and so they'll remember what you searched for before. And that makes it a little easier to know what didn't work for you. So instead of saying, for instance, can you provide me with information about dogs? You could say, generate a list of 10 interesting facts about golden retrievers. That gets you your specificity. It is logical. It also is clear. So you're more likely to get what you want if you can be explicit. The same with adaptive. It's kind of related instead of a next step. You don't have to settle for the first response, and you can manipulate your prompt engineering is what it's called when you try multiple times to get what you're wanting. Um, so if you wanted to ask in this case, can you provide me with information about dogs' relationship with humans? An okay response might be pets bring lots of joy to human lives and are often referred to as man's best friend. Well, okay, but that probably doesn't help me in this writing project. A better response after playing around with the prompt a little bit might be when dogs exhibit certain behaviors like sleeping next to an owner, following them around, and obeying commands, the owner can assume that their dog looks up to them as a leader. So likely what had to change was the way that question was phrased, and also maybe more specificity about what in the relationship you're looking to hear about dog behavior as opposed to more generic. Next slide, please. Okay, so the last letter stands for reflective, and this is more just for thinking about as you might go about using these things. Um, you'll of course want to think about the initial response was good or bad, or rather could be improved, or maybe you're asking the wrong question, for lack of a better way to put it. Could you ask a different way or a clearer way, or maybe more explicitly? What about the initial prompt led to that outcome? So really just a little more self-reflection. What follow-up questions resulted in the best improvements? So once again, I do just want to mention that you don't necessarily always have to create a new question. You can ask for clarity change, tone change, that kind of thing, especially in the more easy to access things like Chat GPT. But in some of these other ones that I've mentioned to you, what you'll want to do instead is they have so many built-in tools that will, for instance, ask if you want to improve something that it spat out to you. Do you want to make it sound more academic? Do you want to add a citation? Do you need to make it sound less academic? There are ways for you to choose those things, and you can do that as well. And then what could you do to make future interactions more efficient? I think there's an actual answer to this, and more often than not, even if you're using the free version of things, I would recommend that you create an account. If you create an account and log in, you'll usually keep a sort of an archive of things you've looked for before, which might help those of you doing longer term writing projects. Like if you are on fire right now because it's before the semester, you have time to write, and you'll have time to write most of August, and then you get slammed in the middle of the semester and you need to pick it back up in January. You might not be remembering what prompts you asked before. If you have an account, then it'll be easier for you to go back to where you were. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So I was gonna talk about these after demonstrating to you, but we'll hit them first, and then I'll try to get Egget to log in as me so I can show you at least one of these. So ethical considerations for AI. I don't want to assume people haven't thought about this, but I think in the beginning, at least I can tell you in library land, as I like to call it, in higher education land in general, the concerns were, oh, people are going to plagiarize and we won't know, or it's the information being added that it has access to is going so quickly that we can't tell when it's a person and when it's not. I think that's still happening, but for your purposes, I don't really think those are the considerations that you need to be thinking about. More of the things are things like biased algorithms, for instance. Once again, just going to reiterate, these things are fed on the whole of human knowledge. So that means all the phobias, all the isms, all of the not so nice things, those can be built into the back end of algorithms, both because people are fallible and biased, and also because a lot of people who are tasked with putting this information in or writing the code for some of these, their job is just to access information. It's not to make a judgment on whether or not it's good, bad, nice, nasty, or anything else information. It's just their job to make these things be able to find things. So I'm saying that to say you don't want to put your brain on autopilot because you're having AI help. You still have to do some analysis and kind of like pick through the information and make sure it makes sense both for your subject matter and that it's not malicious information, which is also on this list. So we'll get back to it at the end, but essentially there are people who are bad actors using AI, just like there are people doing research with AI, you know? And so just keep in mind that there are there's certain information that will come back because it's biased just like people. So for instance, um, if you were to search many AI engines, unfortunately, and look for topics surrounding Islam, a lot of times you will get back um, prompts that are talking about violence, which is not okay. If you are talking about Black or African American people, a lot of times that's associated with getting arrested or police intervention, which is not okay. And same thing with women and sexism, a lot of times because of the way people are either typing in prompts or the information that the algorithms have access to, that stuff does come up. And so you just have to keep your thinking cap on and hopefully be a reasonable person who can tell the difference between factual and not factual information. Okay. The other things, there are factual inconsistencies because just as there are people building these tools for good and for help, there are other people hacking them to input that terrible information that we just talked about, either the bias, the malicious content, or there is a money game behind this too, y'all. So people are competitive and want their app to succeed or their AI to succeed. So just make sure that you are still thinking about factual inconsistencies, what you know to be true about your disciplines, and generally speaking, what you've learned in your scholarly journey overall as you are getting information from these. There's oftentimes a lot of incorrect grammar and punctuation. And I can tell you from my professional experience, even in the last few months, there are people who have brought me lists of they either want articles or other publications that they have found via AI and they don't exist, and neither do the authors. They're just totally made up. So just keep that in mind too. All of these are just kind of make sure you still have your thinking cap on while you're doing this, because there are just made up things that come up as well. Same thing with incorrect grammar and punctuation. You just have to catch those things. I hope nobody's totally copying and pasting AI. If you are thinking of doing that, even for parts of your paper, just know that there's some copyright stuff around that you'll need to look up, and that's a whole different thing that I won't go into here. But you do have to sort of disclose. There's starting to be rules around how much help from AI there can be before you have to either list it as like a co-author for things or like the ethical implications of AI being able to be cited as a co-author. It's not even allowed in some disciplines and in some countries. So keep that stuff in mind. And also, you shouldn't have bot voice if you aren't just copying and pasting. I don't feel like I need to say that to this group, but people can tell. There's lots of studies already, even at this point, that show multiple instances of words that aren't really used often, either in academic or colloquial writing. And so, just so you know, people can tell if you have bot voice. So, sort of keep that in mind. Thank you, Erin, for adding that. Okay, next slide. I think I'm almost done. Yep. Okay, so this is, I guess, good to happen now, and then I will slide my credentials over and hopefully you'll be able to log in as me to one of these. Um, I gave this presentation, but the real AI guru over here in the libraries is my colleague Kevin. He's also really well versed in digital literacies and online pedagogies. He's the online learning librarian. So if you need to contact him or want more information to even just know what's going on around UNLV, because we do have an AI task force, you can email him, give him a call. He's very busy and not always in his office, but he'll get back to you by email. Now, if y'all will pause while I get my login credentials together, I will let Egget learn log in as me, and maybe I can have you I can tell you what to point to just to demonstrate some of this. That's very funny, Jennifer. I don't think there's any AI help on the task force, but I guess we'll never know. And thank y'all for bearing with this very odd way that we have to do this. I appreciate it.
I made it full
So
screen, so it's a little better.
yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Okay, so here's a great thing about Scholarcy, y'all. This is maybe less for the actual writing itself and more for helping you organize your thoughts so you can write more seamlessly, I guess. Will you click on that tab that says Demo Library? It has 5 examples in there. Okay, so these are just randomly in here. They provide this to you so you can get an idea of how you would set this up yourself. If any of you use like Mendeley or Zotero something, it's very similar. So you can click on that first one if you want. I get mRNA-based vaccines. And this is what Scholarcy means by flashcards, sort of organizing things for you. So in another boot camp, I've talked about how you can use your writing to sort of advertise yourself or get a job in the future. They have sort of summarized a tweet for you if you want to share your research that way, so you don't have to figure out, or an X, I don't know what you call them anymore. So you can easily sort of share that. If you scroll down a little bit for me, you can see they've broken these flashcards down into different areas. So go ahead and click on key concepts for me, Ega. It's the first one. Thanks. So it's giving you this particular article and to start, but if you weren't quite sure which keywords you were needing to really refine a topic, it's breaking down what would find you exactly what you need, let's say in the quick search, or if you know which databases that you want, but there's no way your brain was going to come up with RNA dependent RNA polymerase. It's telling you what related articles there would be. Click on scholarly highlights for me, please. Thank you. So this is for my people who like outlines. I personally am not an outline girl, but everyone works differently. So let's say you're in your lit review and you know what you need to write, but you're just having writer's block. You could use these highlights from the article to maybe get your juices flowing for writing. So you can kind of see what this is addressing. These increased pathogens around the world. They're talking about population density and global travel. We all have experience with that over the last few years. Maybe you can start writing about like some things that happened with you during COVID and then wind it back into a scholarly way. They're also addressing like cancer treatment in this and different versions of ways mRNA has been used. So this could just kind of get your brain going, because I don't know about y'all, but when I have writer's block, I really have writer's block and I can't get going to save my life. So that kind of thing might help you there. Scroll down a few more, please, Egget, to comparative analysis. Thank you. So you can see here, it also gives you a little bit of a solid by showing you how this article in particular differs from previous work that's already been existing previous work. Also maybe how the study participants are different is what I see here. There's also counterpoints to earlier claims, and this stuff, especially in the world of pathogens, I'm sure changes very rapidly. And then there's also a little summary of the confirmation of earlier findings from people who've done other articles. So once again, this is just an example article, but you could put your own articles in here to, excuse me, to sort of synthesize and kind of keep track of as you are writing. And if there's a particular part that you want that you just haven't had time to get to, these can just give you a quick place to start. So I thought that would be helpful for y'all. There's plenty of other sort of flashcards, they call them in here, that are giving you basically summaries of things that might be important for the writing. But I just wanted to show you those 3. Let me do my hyper. If there's any other ones you see in there, Ega, that you think you might be interested in clicking on, feel free. I'm gonna pull up my next login while we're here. Future conclusion and future work might actually be helpful too if you are a person with an emerging voice, or you have a dissenting opinion, or you've done the clinical research that you know this doesn't work anymore, and where the gaps kind of are. These might help you sort of with piloting how you're going to use your voice to talk about what's missing from this one. Okay. While he is still scrolling, I'm going to go ahead and get the next login ready. Thanks for your patience. So this also offers a few other just like ways for you to polish up your writing, I guess I would say. So if you are someone who has just like 3 paragraphs in you right now, you see this square that says long article, 1,000+ words. This will help you generate the rest of it. You of course can, if you've got the opposite problem like me, once again, where I don't know if you can see this bottom left one here. I got paraphrase text. If you paste in a bunch, something that's too long, it will give you a little bit easier time. I don't know. I had examples pulled up on my computer. I
Do you
don't
want
know
me
if
to
you
click?
have any examples, but you're welcome to paste something in there if you've got something you can pull from.
Hmm.
No pressure, but
Let's see. I think I was working on something. Let me see. This was from our Overcoming Writer's Block and Perfection Tendencies workshop. Let's
lovely.
see. Let me just post like 2 pages and
I appreciate it. You can't say we're afraid to fail around here, folks.
okay, right here. We have the text.
Okay. Go ahead and hit that paraphrase button at the bottom. Okay, so we had 2 pages worth. Now we've got 465 words, which is much less,
Wow.
right? So I know I keep emphasizing me, but I'm not afraid to tell you about my writing issues, y'all. I tend to be just very verbose. And so sometimes if you've sort of overwritten a thing, then can like it can be a lot of mental labor for me to figure out how to condense it. So you could use something like this. Likewise, if you only had these 465 words in you and you really needed it to be, 6 or 7 or 8 paragraphs, that's what the long word extension is for instead.
This is
Uh,
awesome.
Great, I'm glad. And
Yeah.
as you can see, I don't know that you could see it in the last one, but almost all of these have Chrome extensions. So I hope that that can make it a little easier for you too. Will you go back to home for me? Okay. So you can also, it'll sort of make word clouds for you or visualizations if you have a file to analyze. And sort of between you and AI, you can figure out what it's meaning. Of course, it's got grammar check. And yeah, if you wanted to sort of access their in-house chat GPT, that's what is over in that top personalized toolkit. So this is going to be more like generic and less research heavy. Um, they also have, and y'all may laugh at this, but when I was doing my last research project, one of the things I forgot about was actually writing emails for the study participants, which I need to do before I could do the analysis and get to the write-up. If you ever have anything like that, or you have sort of forgotten a piece or need some help creating, let's say, your informed consent or something like that. We now use Cayuse here, which is a blessing and a curse, in my opinion. It's a little easier to navigate, but that doesn't mean you don't still need to generate those documents. You could use like this email tool that's down here to create sort of an easy to read layman's term version of something you need to use later on in your project. I'm just curious, Ega, will you click on this tools on the side so we can see if there's anything else? Because I didn't have time to do that. And I'm just curious what else there is. Okay, so it looks like y'all would likely be using if you wanted these academic and study tools, but they have a whole bunch here. Will you click on this one under all, Ega, that says academic and study? I'm gonna guess that's probably most helpful for folks. Under categories. Yeah, so I know none of you are plagiarizing, but of course, because these language models are pulling from other things, you might still want to use that button from time to time if it's an available tool in these. Not because you plagiarized, but because they're just pulling from any information that exists. So it may end up being phrased like something that actually exists, and we don't want you getting into trouble for that, of course. This AI text humanizer is a thing that will help you with that bot voice that I mentioned, sort of ethical considerations. That's becoming a thing in more and more of these tools. So if you like what it had to say, but you can tell it definitely doesn't sound like a human said it, I would recommend sort of running it through there. Um, I have not actually had a chance to play around with these, but it's good to know they exist. Like, I'm guessing essay writer is not going to write your thing for you. However, if you do need to, like, you need help with, let's say, how to close out a sentence well or an opening sentence and you're just brain dead, I'm going to guess that's what a tool like essay writer is for. Um, and then of course citation machine. Now, what I'll tell you is I'll try to have Ega log into one more of these. There's some of these that will auto enter a citation for you, and that's a whole interesting thing on its own. You still want to check those, so don't forget that part of research. Normally it's doing an okay thing, but it usually is creating them as a footnote, and then you still have to make sure that it is in whatever citation form you need. So I would hate for any of you to get caught up like that. Okay, go ahead and log out of this one, and I will hang tight, y'all. I'm gonna try and get you into Jenny Insight before our time's up. So this is, I guess, good knowledge for everyone. Some of these let you log in through Google if you're using your UNLV stuff. And it's your laptop, that's fine. Just know that it's not going to recognize your password then. I think that's part of the problem with some of these non-logins. I just logged in with my Google profile and now they're kind of like, how do I let you log in if you don't exist?
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm resetting my password just really quickly.
Actually, Brittani, can I maybe attempt to answer that question real quick as you're doing
Yeah,
that?
sure.
So just to speak on the whether it's safe or not to put in your own dissertation into things like ChatGPT, it's a complicated answer and it's also not complicated. But basically, my advice for that. By the way, if you don't know, my name is Layla. I'm the coordinator at the Writing Center. I do some research and I've worked with Kevin on AI things. So with ChatGPT, like anything, as you would suspect with these generators, you want to make sure you're always careful with what content you put in there, because ultimately we don't know how companies will use this information. Ideally, it's not going to be for anything bad, but you always want to be cautious with information that you put in there because it does feed like the things like ChatGPT, Claude, and all of that. There are options to turn off like memory. Like I know ChatGPT will have options where you don't have to. It doesn't log any of the input that you put in there. That used to be only an option with the paid version. I'd have to check if it's still done for the free version. So that is something to consider. But ultimately, when it comes to like privacy and security, it's always good to be cautious. When it comes to things like turnitin.com, again, ultimately, there is no perfect plagiarism detector. I heard turnitin.com is one of the better ones, but it is not exactly clear on whether or not it's going to 100% show up and register. So that is something you have to be really cautious with, especially in regards to working with an advisor, a professor, things like that when you're turning it in, because there is always a possibility that it will pull up like that. Whether it's entirely accurate or not, we cannot guarantee, again, because the technology is not really caught up 100%. But it's getting better and better every day, both AI and turnitin.com in terms of detection. But it's just something in terms of like digital security and privacy that you should always consider that information might be stored. And then again, we're not entirely sure how reliable or how much it's going to show up in the turnitin.com. So all of that is to say it's complicated, but also it's probably what you would expect.
Okay, so this looks like so bare bones, like it's not gonna do anything for you, right? So you gotta, I think at this point y'all are coming in obviously with research concepts. I guess since you've got your hand on the wheel, so to speak, you can start with the prompt. You can ask it a question, you can put a sentence fragment, it's up to you really. And we'll see if it even knows what EDI is.
Like
But
this?
yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and do start writing. So as y'all can see, what will end up happening is I asked it a question. It gives a title, which is actually sometimes the harder part of finishing writing a thing. So that might be helpful to you. But it gives you just a little bit. It doesn't give you as much output as like ChatGPT would give, if any of you played with that. What you can do is you can see here is accept, try, or try again. So go ahead and accept it. And Would it guess depending on your topic? I'm trying to think of what I looked at last time. It generated a little bit more for me. So since it's not doing that, let's go ahead and try again and see what's different. No? Does anyone else have a topic they would like to use for an example? My brain is drawing a blank of what I looked at before. Let's try the Writing Center's role in student success. Okay. What did you just click then that it gave you more, Ega?
Oh, I just click accept and then
Accept.
it just keeps
Okay.
generating.
Interesting. Okay.
Or it can try again as like I think it changes the words. And then if you
Interesting.
accept it, it's just like keeps writing.
Okay, so that's interesting. I cannot remember what I was looking at before, y'all. However, what this thing usually does, if you've given it a probably wide enough prompt, is it will offer you some tools you can use as you're writing. So what I could see before is like improve fluency or make sound more academic or make sound more persuasive or add citation, which is the thing that I was trying to show y'all. Will you click on that citation that is hyperlinked for me, Ega?
Oh, sorry.
The
This
one
one
that's
right here?
Ali et al. Yeah. Okay. So this is something that they're saying has to do with the prompt that I gave it, and it's giving you the authors. Will you click where it says narrative for me? So I don't know if y'all saw how that changed a little bit, but if you're a person who is better with paraphrasing than needing like the direct quote insight in text citation, I'm so sorry, I can say words, y'all. You can go between the narrative and the parenthetical, how it's changed it there for you. This also usually, or gave me the option last time to actually open up the article because I was logged in also to UNLV's to the library resources. And if we owned it, it actually just opened the article for me. So as y'all can see, by no means am I a AI research tools expert, but I did do the grunt work of some of these for you to see which ones were more or less helpful. Now with this one where it opens and you just see a white screen and it doesn't really seem like it's very helpful. The tutorials on the left are actually probably helpful for this one. There's also a library on the right that will sort of, I think also has some demo things that can give you an idea of what it can do. So you can also build a build your own internalized version of things that keep suggesting for you in here by adding your own articles. And for all of these, I would say adding your own articles will, a few of them that you already have at this point in your research will make this much more refined for you than just these random prompts that I've been giving. As you can see, a lot of them have sort of hidden features. I'm just in the free trial of this one, so it's not going to give me more references, as you can see hidden down here under this lightning bolt. But it can take some of the guesswork out of that stuff if you have a super long bibliography, or for those of you who are APA folks like me, even though APA 7 has been around now probably about a year, if you haven't really been writing and you don't want to do the hard work of trying to figure out the change between 6 and 7, maybe it's worth it to you to do that. I just want to plug that the library, if you're using library resources, we have them auto-generate as well, but I always tell people just to double check them because it's always an algorithm and algorithms can be wrong. So hopefully these gave you kind of an idea of like all AI is not quite created the same and what they can do for you as you need to write. Because as I do a lot of these workshops, it's not always just about the end product of like the finished paper. It's all the steps up to that point. So hopefully I kind of demonstrated that for you, really, Ega, and demonstrated it for you since I can't share my screen. In ways that can kind of help you when you are blocked or you need help with tone or your brain just doesn't have anything else to give and you need a little bit of an outline to get you going. Hopefully this small intro to these is helpful to someone along their boot camp journey. So I know we started a little late, but it's 2, so I want to be respectful of your time. Y'all can, of course, email me if you want, but as Layla said, Kevin is really the library's kind of AI guru. And so I have told him to anticipate maybe getting some email from y'all. He's very easy to Google if you missed the contact slide. So it's just tools after the meeting. Sure, I can make a list of the tools. Sorry, I'm checking the chat. I'm sorry, I should have read this out loud. Someone said, is it possible to have a list of all the tools after the meeting? And so I can make that short list for you, sure. I see. Thank you, Layla, for hopping in on that. Do some of these do grammar checks? I'm glad it was helpful, Writing Center. Sorry for the technical difficulties, y'all. I did my best.
I think it worked out perfectly. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise on this topic. But I see a lot of thank yous in the chat, but I wonder if there are any other questions. We have like 1-2 more minutes.
I will say for most of these, though no one asked, I just signed up for free trials for these to see which ones are more to my liking. And now that I've played with some of them, I might actually kind of play around with them. I definitely think for those of you in writing bootcamp, if you want to just try one and do the free trial, HyperWrite AI is probably most helpful because there's over 100 writing tools that help with everything from tone to clarity to consistency, anything you can think of, honestly. Just make sure you set yourself a calendar reminder to not have to pay $29 for it if you don't want it after a week. So, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jennifer said, am I the only one who uses please when using AI tools? Yeah, I feel rude sometimes too, you know. I gotta say please. But all right, seems like there's no other questions. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today, Brittani, and thank you for all that came in and participated in this workshop. We'll be posting this workshop in the Graduate College YouTube channel later on for your reference. Everybody have a great day then.
Yep. Bye,
Thanks so
everyone.
much. Bye.